parents forced me to quit college to save our family home, but I secretly took night shifts and graduated anyway, then found out my dad hid a huge inheritance and wanted to control my life forever until I finally said no alone. I'm 23, living in a cramped apartment in Cincinnati, but I grew up in a small town just outside Dayton with my parents, Mark, 52, and Laura, 50, and my older sister, Ilara, 27. I guess you could say our life was normal, nothing flashy, just scraping by most months. I was in my second year of college, majoring in business, when my dad called me into the living room one night, all tense, pacing like a storm about to break. He told me our mortgage was behind and unless someone stepped up, we'd lose the house. I remember just staring at him, thinking, "Wait, what? Me? College is my only shot to get out of this mess." But he insisted. He said, "We need you to take a break. Get a job, save the house." My mom just nodded, like she agreed without needing to say anything. I didn't argue at first. I was too shocked, too helpless, and honestly, part of me didn't want to disappoint them. But I felt this fire in me saying, "I can't just stop. I've worked too hard." So I quit school, and the next morning I got a job at a diner, working long, endless shifts. Day after day, carrying trays, wiping counters, pretending I didn't feel my world shrinking around me. But nights, I can't even explain it, I was restless, angry, and desperate. I started taking night shifts at a warehouse across town, hiding my schedule from my parents. I'd crawl into bed at 3 a.m., stomach aching, hands raw from lifting boxes, but feeling this tiny spark of control. No one knew. I didn't tell Ilara. I didn't tell my friends. My life became this insane rhythm: work, sleep for a few hours, repeat. And somehow, I kept up with my classes online, hiding my grades in a quiet folder on my laptop, silently defying my parents' demands while still saving enough money to keep the house from going under. At first, I felt guilty. Every time my father came back home, he would look at me with this expectation, proud of what he believed I was sacrificing. He had no idea I was continuing with my degree, still trying to protect both the home and my future. There were nights I'd sit in my tiny room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was going to collapse from exhaustion, questioning if this was really worth it. I thought about just quitting everything, letting the house go, taking a real break. But I couldn't. I couldn't let my parents down. Even when my sister would FaceTime me from her new apartment in Chicago, living her own life, I would lie about the hours I worked, saying it was just school stress. I didn't want her pity, didn't want her worry. It became this fragile balancing act, my parents thinking they had control over my future, me secretly grabbing back every piece of it. The warehouse job was brutal. Summers felt endless under fluorescent lights, the air thick with cardboard dust and the smell of machines. But I liked the quiet honesty of it. No one cared about my grades or ambitions there. I was just this guy moving boxes. At the diner, it was different. People smiled, complained, shouted, tipped sometimes, sometimes not. I became a ghost in my own life, someone my parents saw only at the edges. And then, one day, while balancing the 2 jobs and online classes, I received my first real paycheck from the night job. It wasn't a lot, but it felt like my own victory. I hid it in my closet, a secret rebellion. I think that's when I realized I wasn't just saving the house. I was saving myself. And then, the storm hit. One Saturday afternoon, my dad dropped a stack of papers on the kitchen table, all legal-looking and official. I didn't even look at them at first. I just felt my chest tighten. He said quietly, almost smugly, "I've been managing everything, including some investments you don't know about. There's more money than you think, but it's complicated. I control it, and I want to make sure you understand who's in charge here." I froze. For weeks, I had been working my ass off, hiding everything, thinking I was struggling to keep us afloat, and all along he had this hidden inheritance tucked away, controlling our lives like a puppet master. I wanted to scream, to throw the papers across the room, but I didn't. I just sat there trying to process that the sacrifices, the exhaustion, the secret double life I'd been living, maybe none of it mattered to him. Or worse, maybe it mattered only if I followed his rules. It started to eat me alive. I couldn't trust my parents anymore. Every time Mark smiled, I saw calculation. Every time Laura asked how school was going, I felt a hidden agenda. I knew I had to make a choice: keep pretending, follow his rules, stay trapped in this house, or finally take my life back. I spent nights walking my neighborhood, thinking, planning, visualizing how I could just say no. The thought terrified me. I had been so conditioned to obey, to prioritize the family above myself. But I also realized something: I had worked through pain, exhaustion, and deceit to earn my degree. That wasn't something anyone could take away. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about freedom. And that's when I finally decided. I wouldn't let the inheritance dictate my life. I wouldn't let fear of losing the house make me a pawn. I quietly finished my semester, submitted my final projects, and waited. Every step I took felt like defiance, like reclaiming ownership of my own story. My parents noticed something had shifted: my silence, my quiet confidence, my refusal to bend to every suggestion. They asked me why I was suddenly so calm, and I just shrugged. I didn't tell them anything, but inside, I felt this quiet power, this truth I had been denying myself. I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't a dependent. I was a survivor, one who had fought for his future while maintaining our family. It wasn't until the semester ended that I finally felt a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. My dad, Mark, kept dropping hints, little comments that weren't subtle if you read them the way I did. "You know, it's easier when people just listen to those who know best," he'd say casually over dinner, like he hadn't just spent decades telling me how to live my life. I laughed it off, joking about how he had become the household philosopher overnight, but inside, my chest would tighten every single time. I realized how much he had been molding me, controlling my options without me noticing until now. And I hated him for it, but at the same time, couldn't fully hate him because my mom, Laura, was trapped too. She followed him silently, nodding and going along with whatever Mark decided, always sacrificing herself for what he called family stability. Everything was different now, even little things. How my sister, Alara, had moved to Chicago at age 27 and made a life partly due to the same influence. I remembered her leaving, the way she had hugged me at the airport, whispering, "You don't have to be trapped here forever." Those words came back to me constantly, a lifeline I had ignored too long. Mom had an emergency with her health around then, nothing life-threatening but serious enough to shake the family. I took some days off work to stay home and help, and one afternoon as I was folding laundry, I noticed a set of papers tucked under a pile of old bills. I hesitated for a long time, heart hammering, knowing I probably shouldn't look, but curiosity and maybe anger won. I opened them, and my stomach sank. There was a folder detailing my dad's hidden inheritance, all these investments, properties, savings accounts I had never known about. The total was enough to completely wipe all our debts, pay off the mortgage, and leave each of us comfortable for life. But here's the thing, he hadn't told anyone. Not my mom, not my sister, not me. The realization hit like a gut punch. I had risked my health, my social life, my sleep, and my sanity to keep this house, all while he hoarded this safety net for himself, with strings attached. He wasn't just controlling money, he was controlling me, my future, trying to dictate every choice I had made. I felt this mix of betrayal, rage, and despair that I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. For weeks, I wrestled over what to do. Every time my dad asked me about work, about my plans, I wanted to explode. I wanted to scream, I know about the inheritance. I know what you've been doing." But I didn't. I stayed calm, pretending ignorance, all the while making mental plans. I couldn't confront him directly yet. I wasn't ready for the fallout. I had worked too hard, and I needed leverage, a plan that wouldn't leave me destitute or homeless. So I doubled down on my night shifts and online classes, finishing my degree with almost military precision, hiding every ounce of exhaustion behind fake smiles at the diner and short, polite conversations at the warehouse. I felt like I was living a double life, one my parents couldn't even imagine existed. I was playing the long game, and every day felt like walking a tightrope with no safety net. Then came the confrontation that changed everything. One evening, my dad cornered me in the kitchen. He held a glass of whiskey. He always drank too much when he was tense, and he said quietly, almost smugly, "I know you've been hiding something. I can feel it. You think you're making your own choices, but really, you've just been running in circles." I froze. I knew he was bluffing, but something in his eyes gave me pause for just a second. Then I realized I wasn't a kid anymore. I took a deep breath and said, "I've been working hard, Dad. I've been finishing my degree, even when you told me to quit. I've been keeping us afloat. And I'm done pretending that I need your approval for everything." He blinked, clearly surprised, maybe even a little shaken. I felt this wild mix of satisfaction and fear in that moment. Satisfaction that I finally spoke my truth, fear of what he might do next. After that night, things didn't immediately explode, but they shifted. My dad was quieter, more calculating in a way that made me wary. My mom seemed relieved yet tense, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I started paying more attention to details, like how he handled finances, how he interacted with my sister when she visited, how he subtly tried to influence my decisions even without saying anything directly. I realized the inheritance wasn't just money, it was a weapon, a way for him to maintain control of the family long after we'd grown up, long after we should have been independent. I remember lying awake at night, thinking, "This is insane. I've been fighting for our survival, and he's been hiding a lifeline from us all this time." I felt both furious and oddly empowered because I had seen the truth. Knowledge gave me a strange kind of control I didn't have before. By summer, I had completed my degree. I felt exhausted, but there was a lightness I hadn't felt in years, like I was finally breathing. I walked across the stage for graduation alone, no family cheering loudly in the stands, no sister sending me a selfie from Chicago, just me in my cap and gown. And somehow that solitude felt right. I realized that in all this chaos, I had taken back ownership of my life. My parents could no longer dictate my choices. My future wasn't theirs to control, it was mine. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Mark and Laura had power, and they had history on their side, but I had grit, determination, and a clear sense of who I was. And that was worth more than any hidden inheritance, any whispered control, or any expectations I had been carrying for years. After college, I moved into a small studio apartment not far from the diner I still worked at. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My parents didn't like it. Of course, they called every day, asking why I wasn't moving back in, why I wasn't using the inheritance, why I wasn't following their plan. I'd smile, make some vague excuse about needing independence, and hang up. But inside, my stomach twisted every time I heard my dad's voice, calm and commanding, as if he expected compliance just because he said so. I started to notice things about him I hadn't before, little patterns, how he subtly belittled my choices during casual conversations, how he tried to guilt me into accepting his way of life, how he acted like the money made him superior in every possible way. I realized that the inheritance had never been about survival. It had been a tool to keep me, to keep all of us, under his thumb. And I couldn't let that happen anymore. Not after everything I had sacrificed. The real test came one evening when he invited me over for dinner. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe part of me wanted to see if he could change, if the man I once trusted could actually respect my decisions. The table was set like always, the air thick with unspoken rules. He began casually, talking about his plans, the responsible way he thought I should handle my money, my career, my future. I listened, nodding politely, feeling my jaw clench with every sentence. And then, something snapped. I set down my fork and looked him straight in the eye. "Dad," I said, "I've worked my ass off. I've finished my degree. I've saved myself from everything you thought would destroy me. And I'm done following your rules. You don't control me. You haven't for years." The silence that followed was deafening. My mom looked shocked, like she couldn't believe I had actually said it, like she had been waiting for someone else to find the courage. And my dad, well, he just stared. I saw the storm behind his eyes, the anger, the disbelief, maybe even fear. I realized in that moment that I had finally claimed my freedom, and it was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. After that confrontation, things shifted subtly but irrevocably. My dad stopped making passive-aggressive comments about my life. He tried, in small ways, to regain control, sending me emails about responsible financial decisions and family priorities, but I ignored them. My mom, meanwhile, began to confide in me, telling me things she'd never admitted before: how she'd felt trapped in the marriage, how she'd resented some of the choices Mark made, how she admired that I finally spoke up. I realized that breaking free wasn't just about money or inheritance, it was about shaking the power structure my family had maintained for decades, challenging patterns of control and obedience I'd been taught since childhood. And it scared the hell out of me. Then there was Jewelora. She came home from Chicago for a short visit, and we talked for hours in my tiny apartment, sprawled on the floor with pizza boxes and empty soda cans scattered around. She told me stories about her life, the struggles she faced trying to assert independence from our parents, the mistakes, the triumphs. As I listened to her, I realized just how much my choices had mirrored hers, how much I'd unconsciously followed a path she'd carved, learning from her courage. And yet I also realized that my journey was uniquely mine. I had sacrificed in ways she never had to: night shifts, hidden from view, keeping my degree a secret, carrying the weight of the house. It was exhausting, but it had taught me resilience, resourcefulness, and the hard truth that nobody could fight my battles for me. Around that time, I decided to take a risk. I used a small portion of my earnings from the night shifts to start a side business, something that I had been dreaming about but always pushed aside because of my parents' expectations. I didn't tell anyone, not my dad, not my mom, not even Jewelora at first. It felt good to nurture something entirely my own, to make decisions without anyone watching, without the invisible leash of the inheritance hanging over my head. Slowly, the business grew. Customers responded well. I started seeing a future that didn't include anyone's control but my own, and for the first time, I felt genuinely hopeful. I realized freedom wasn't just about money. It was about choice, having the power to say yes or no, to follow your instincts, to live without someone dictating the terms of your life. But freedom didn't come without friction. My dad wasn't happy. He called me one evening, calm but with that unmistakable undertone of control. "You're making reckless choices," he said, "and it worries me. You could lose everything." I almost laughed. I wanted to shout, "You've already tried to control me for years. I'm still here, thriving." But instead I stayed quiet. I realized words could only go so far. Action mattered. And my actions spoke louder than any argument. I had survived exhaustion, betrayal, and years of manipulation. I had finished my degree in secret, worked multiple jobs, and now I was building something that was mine. That was proof. That was freedom. The most important moment came when I finally faced the issue of the inheritance head-on. I asked my dad for control of my part, to let me decide how to use it. He hesitated, anger flashing briefly in his eyes, but then, slowly, he signed the papers. It felt surreal, like a weight I had carried my whole life had finally lifted. I realized then I wasn't just claiming money. I was claiming autonomy. I had forced him to see me as an equal, to recognize that I wasn't a child to be managed anymore. That night, lying in my small apartment, I felt the exhaustion finally fade, replaced with the clarity I hadn't known I could feel. I was independent. I was whole. And for the first time, I truly believed that I could shape my life on my terms, free from manipulation, free from fear, free from the shadows of the past. The morning after signing the papers, I woke up before sunrise and just sat on my apartment balcony, staring at the quiet streets below. There was a strange calm, the kind that feels almost fragile because you know the storm was only just past. My phone buzzed with a message from my dad, short and clipped. "We'll talk later." I didn't reply. I realized then that I didn't have to. For the first time, the house, the inheritance, my parents' expectations, they didn't matter. I had earned my life, piece by piece, in secret and in silence. And now it was mine to hold, not them. Jewelora called later that day, full of laughter and pride. She told me I had done what she had always wanted to do but never fully dared. And I felt something shift, a weight lifted, but also a responsibility settled in its place. Freedom wasn't just about breaking away. It was about carrying yourself forward with integrity, even when no one was watching, even when no one believed you could. Over the next few weeks, I started setting boundaries. My parents would ask for updates about work, money, even my social life, and I simply redirected, politely but firmly, without apology. It was strange at first. There were moments I felt guilty, moments I wondered if I was being cruel, but deep down, I knew I had been denied my agency for too long. I had been told what to do, how to feel, and even what to hope for, and now I was rewriting that script. The diner and warehouse jobs had faded into the background. They were part of the past, part of the battle I'd fought alone. My new business, small but thriving, became my anchor. Each decision I made for it reminded me that I didn't need permission to exist or succeed. I wasn't living in someone else's shadow anymore. One evening, I invited my parents over to my apartment, not to argue, not to reconcile, just to show them I was capable of standing on my own. The night was quiet, the air thick with tension at first, but eventually, small conversations grew. We didn't resolve decades of manipulation or unspoken control, and maybe we never would. But I saw a subtle change, especially in my mom. She smiled genuinely, for the first time in years, and it wasn't at my expense. My dad, Mark, remained cautious, but there was a grudging respect in his eyes that hadn't existed before. I realized true freedom wasn't about revenge or shutting people out. It was about creating space to exist as yourself, even if others didn't fully understand it. That night, lying in bed, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, fully and entirely. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm I had chosen. I celebrated small victories. My first profitable month, a loyal customer who kept coming back, nights when I could sleep without feeling like I was hiding from the world. My relationship with my parents became what it had always needed to be, cautious, respectful, but not dictated by fear or control. I realized I couldn't change them, and they couldn't change me, but I could choose how to interact, how much influence to allow, how much of myself to keep. And for the first time, I felt truly adult, not just in age, but in spirit. I'd fought for my independence, clawed it from a place of secrecy and exhaustion, and now I could live it openly. In retrospect, the threads of my journey are clear now. Each night shift, each secret class, each silent hour under the burden of expectations, it all built me. The inheritance, the house, the control of my parents, these were catalysts, not chains. And now I understand that courage is not just screaming and not confrontation. Courage is persistence, resilience, the quiet resolve to keep going when the world is against you. I am 23, and I am free, but free is messy and complicated and full of compromise. I have scars and lessons and victories that no one else can see, and that, more than anything else, belongs to me. And I would never trade it for anything.